There is nothing wrong with your radio.
Do not attempt to adjust the volume.
We are controlling the broadcast.
For the next hour we will control all that you hear.
You are about to experience the knowledge and insights of the media mothership.
All right, you're listening to Edge Radio 99.3 FM. This is Media Mothership in Nipaluna, Hobart, Tasmania. We explore how media can shape our understanding of the world around us. We're streaming on edgeradio.org.au and YouTube and Twitch. You can message us on the chat at, just SMS us in the studio, 0488 11707. Today, I'm joined by MC Dent, who, has a background in MCing, which we link to today's unpacking of wrestling. Thank you. Okay, yep. Once I put your mic up, it's going well, finally. Many gremlins in the studio. I'm probably the biggest of them. A kind of self-inflicted gremlin monster. So, what I want to do is jump straight in with some, the reason why I wanted to do wrestling, which was my fascination with Donald Trump's election, and an article I'd read saying that one way of understanding the appeal of Trump is, well, I guess the way in which he can hold a crowd in interest and thrall in his rallies is partially with some of the kind of training he was getting in WWE through various spots he had there, very identities he got brought in. And I had no idea that Donald Trump had done things on WWE. I'd known he'd, The Apprentice and various other TV things and his general celebrity identity. But the wrestling thing's a whole other order, isn't it? I mean, we're going to see the Donald Trump versus McMahon hair versus hair challenge in a second. But is that the only thing he's done on wrestling?
No. I'm not super familiar with his stuff that he's done before the hair versus hair match at Mania 23. I know that he was on episodes of Saturday Night's Main Event when it aired on NBC back in the 1980s. But essentially, Trump is one of the two people who Vince McMahon wishes that he could be.
And Vince McMahon is the kind of CEO, was the CEO, the big man, the guy that called all the shots.
Yeah, McMahon is an exceptionally ruthless businessman. So for anyone who's unfamiliar with wrestling as a whole, it used to be that wrestling was essentially a series of, I guess, fiefdoms in the United States of America, where every sort of state had its own territory, and they all had their own leagues, and they were all sort of under the watchful eye of the National Wrestling Association, the NWA, which, for someone who has any knowledge of rap music over the last 40 years, hearing a NWA brings up very different connotations.
But then you had like Hulk Hogan and, that's in that kind of 80s, 90s era where there were fiefdoms and various kind of circuits of wrestling, and McMahon had one of them.
Vince McMahon, and we say Vincent Kennedy McMahon is the one who ended the whole fiefdom era, because he bought what was then the WWF, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, of his dad, Vincent J. McMahon, so Vince McMahon Sr., in the, I believe it was the early 1980s. It could have been the late 70s. But essentially, that operated out of Connecticut. The WWF was Connecticut's territory, and McMahon had huge ambitions on basically taking it from a regional thing to a global thing. And Hulk Hogan was his golden boy. He was like, I have this dude who's super charismatic. Right. He's going to be the face of my organization. And he went around poaching talent from all the other fiefdoms, like all the other territories around the country, basically saying, come over here, I'll pay you more, and you're going to be, really going to be doing really well.
And this is in the 1980s.
This is throughout the 1980s, yeah. So essentially by the end of the decade, the majority of those territories had been absorbed into either the WWF or WCW.
And what's interesting here is successful. So clearly that kind of businessman ruthlessness.
Yeah.
And as you've mentioned, there are two people he would most like to be, and one of them is this, the celebrity businessman, myth-making identity of Donald Trump, which we're going to, I guess, get. So that I guess that partially explains why McMahon would have Trump on so much. That it's a way of him, getting in with his hero, his
idol.
His idol, right?
He's just a similarly ruthless businessman who undercuts his competition, inflates himself at every possible opportunity, and he's just always been a huge role model for McMahon. McMahon's wife, Linda, is actually on one of the cabinets within the Trump organization. So she's a politician.
That's what I'm interested in, because in the current administration, is there any flow in from the McMahon, just pressing buttons, the McMahon era to the identity there? And there is, isn't there?
Yeah. And it's also worth noticing that McMahon was essentially highly pressured into resigning from his post at the very top of the WWE a couple of years ago because he's being invested by the FBI for a sex trafficking ring.
Right, yeah. So there's a series on Netflix, right, at the
Yeah.
moment, which is kind of unpacking the legacy of McMahon. And this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's kind of... It was produced before the big scandal broke.
It was produced before the big scandal, but the fact that McMahon is an extremely dodgy dude is an open secret. I mean, he's been accused of, trigger warning, he's been accused of sexual harassment as far back as the early 1990s. And the fact that he is not even remotely faithful to his wife is also a hugely open secret. Paul Heyman has the absolute best line of the entire documentary. Paul Heyman's a manager who works at the WWE, worked under McMahon. Now he works under Triple H, who's the new head of creative. And Heyman goes, what do you say? He says, Vince McMahon has... Oh, this sounds like Gilbert Gottfried. Sounds like Gilbert Gottfried. Vince McMahon has one relationship to which he has been monogamous and faithful his whole life, and that is to the WWE. Vince doesn't own the WWE. The WWE owns Vince.
So we have this identity who is very much this kind of capitalist, and many people would be really impressed with McMahon's identity. Or not, right? At the moment, the allegations against him have really soured.
Yeah. People in because the moment when McMahon sort of became a really well-known name outside of the dirt sheets was around the time of 1998. Because prior to 1997, he'd only been a commentator, an interviewer. On camera, of course. Behind the scenes, he ran everything. 97 is when he was acknowledged as the guy who owned it, and 98 is when he turned heel, became a villain, and started what is even the biggest detractors of the WWE and McMahon style will say that the greatest feud of all time is McMahon as the heel boss versus Stone Cold Steve Austin as the babyface anti-hero. And
because this was the other identity that McMahon wanted to be, right? So on one hand it's Trump, and the other hand it's the wrestler.
Yeah, the other person he wanted to be was Shawn Michaels, who's an extremely flashy, flamboyant, preening, was in his heyday. He's a lot older now, but basically one of the greatest in-ring technicians of all time. And watching McMahon gushing, listening to McMahon gushing over him, watching how much he was coddled.
Right.
Because Michaels had a lot of his own problems in the 90s, and he was notorious for his backstage politicking and tantrums and general unprofessionalism. But very good performer, and McMahon basically babied him throughout all 94, 95, 96, 97, would just constantly do anything Michaels wanted. And of course, for those who aren't initiated, because WWE is still somewhat niche, it's quote unquote wrestling, but it's all predetermined, and it's not actually a sport. It's theater / soap opera disguised as sport, which is the reason if anyone doesn't get any of the illusions that we're making, I suppose.
All right, so while I'm just going to set up with a different audio out, because I think the laptop I've got is going to probably fry our brains if I try to play it off it. So while I set this up, what are we about to see? This hair versus hair thing, this had been building up for a while, right?
Yes. So, I mean, I haven't watched the build up, but and this is the thing, a really good thing about big pay-per-views that WWE does, is that they have hype packages beforehand where they show you all the bits on, week-to-week television where they've been building up to this match. And this is McMahon versus Trump in a hair versus hair match. They're not competing against each other. They each have their own champion. So Trump's being represented by Bobby Lashley and McMahon's being represented by Umaga. But essentially, whoever loses, the billionaire backing that wrestler has to have their head shaved.
All right, so we'll see if we can listen to a little bit of the build-up. And what we're going to hear here is... Donald Trump kind of trash-talking McMahon, and they're deciding on the wrestlers they're going to choose. But again, what we're going to hear here is a version of Trump, right? So he's playing a version of himself here. Like, they've brought Trump in, and I was trying to get my head around because in wrestling you have the baby face and the heel. And I was curious if Trump was going to be a heel, that is a villain, which for some reason I assumed he would be. But you were saying, no, he's the baby face, actually, against McMahon.
Against McMahon, Trump is the babyface because McMahon is one of the ultimate heels. He is exceptionally good at getting people to hate him because he knows that the more people hate him, the more they'll tune in to see him get his butt kicked. Now, it is significant that the guest referee for this is Stone Cold Steve Austin, who was McMahon's archenemy in the late 1990s, early 2000s. To put it in perspective, the degree to which McMahon will belittle himself to make money through the WWE, there is a notorious episode of Monday Night Raw from 1998, the middle of 1998, the peak of the McMahon and Austin feud. And essentially, Austin takes McMahon hostage and keeps on intimating that he's going to murder him on live TV.
Oh, my gosh.
And it keeps on saying things like, it won't hurt, you won't feel anything. So the very much exact words thing. At the end of the broadcast, he drags McMahon out to the middle of the ring, points a revolver at his head, and it's just a bang pistol. And McMahon, for the sake of drawing attention and making the audience laugh, wets himself on live television.
So, yes, there's no... he'll do anything.
Yeah, it's,
really.
It's very full on.
So real showman.
Yes,
but not in the kind of possibly admirable way. Let's see it.
I mean, a dude who's willing to urinate inside his own trousers to sell tickets. There's something admirable in that.
He's selling that story, right? So one of the things about wrestling, which is so enjoyable, is that kind of the kayfabe, the storyline that's there, and the commitment to the character you're playing, and the commitment to the heel identity or the babyface identity. And what I'm curious about, if we're seeing the seeds, because how long ago was this hair versus hair match? This was like
it's Mania 23, so that would have been 2007.
Right. All right. So just under 20 years ago, and is. Yeah, well, let's listen to a section of it.
If you lose, I get to shave your head. If I lose, you get to shave my head.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome.
Because the man who represents me, Umaga. This is concerned. Umaga is indeed yes. Well, I know one thing, yes.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I know one thing, champion Bobby Lashley. At WrestleMania. And probably the last contract you signed was here. This is a stuff. Don't call. Yes, it is. Get over. Get Trump and Lashley. Oh, a man did all cut off.
All right, so what we see there are the inevitable... What was it, inevitable that McMahon lost? I mean, would there have been any way Trump would have gone on if he could have had his hair shaved? Was there a real sense that or it could be either, or is it pretty much a fix?
It was a fix. It was 110% a fix. I mean, Trump would not allow himself to be shaved in the middle of the ring, nor would McMahon expect Trump to allow himself to be shaved in the middle of the ring. So McMahon was always aware that he was going to lose this match. And again, because he deliberately plays up such an incredible heel, he's got no problem he had no problem humiliating himself on broadcast to get people to tune in.
And are you convinced by some of the analysis going around at the moment that Trump's use of wrestling has helped him in his election? You know, the way in which he can present himself, the way in which an audience that are maybe huge wrestling fans knew about Trump through wrestling, and that kind of showmanship. Do you see a relationship there? Do you see any conversation happening with the Trump we're seeing as president, or the election cycle he went into to become president, and this wrestling identity?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, wrestling's a very primal form of entertainment, because it's all about getting reactions from the crowd, whether positive or negative. And Trump would have learned from his time in the ring how to get reactions from the crowd.
Because as you were saying, there's I was asking you, because we're going to get around to talking about the Royal Rumble 2025 in a second, and I was talking about the story, the idea is that the end goal is known to the wrestlers, right? The point, like who's going to win or lose, is known. So, but there can be changes and discussions happening before. But you said no, sometimes the audience will actually be involved in that in a really dramatic way, right? That ability to feed off the audience, to know the audience, like the identity you've constructed, and then how the audience of the day are going to feed into that energy, and then you kind of ride that. It can be kind of unpredictable and go in some unpredictable ways. Is that common, or does that happen?
Well, a good promoter needs to listen to what noises their audience are making. So if you've got a character who's a dastardly heel, but the audience is cheering for them, then you need to ideally you would turn that character babyface, and then to make those cheers very genuine. And if you've got a character who's meant to be a babyface who everyone adores, but they're constantly booing them, then you probably need to turn that babyface heel.
So examples of this would be...
So two big examples. Well, we've already mentioned Austin. He came along as a heel in early 1996. Yeah, came in as a villain, but the audiences just loved him, so they just cheered for him. So
what was it about his identity they responded to? The working class.
He was a breath of fresh air, because McMahon kept on trying to push carbon copies of Hulk Hogan, who'd been out of the company for about 5 years three or 4 years at that point. And Austin just comes along and he's this brash, angry redneck who says the word ass on TV, which basically wasn't done back then because it was very much a family-friendly product. Whereas McMahon was trying to push guys like Shawn Michaels, who were smiling baby faces. And so because he was playing like a gritty at that point an anti-hero, but also, a villainous anti-hero in 1996, people were like, this guy's really entertaining. And so they started cheering for him. And that's why he's put into that famous program against Bret Hart, where Bret Hart ends up turning heel and Austin turns babyface at WrestleMania. But also, I mean, an example of someone who was pushed as a smiling babyface at that time is The Rock, who was originally made his debut at Survivor Series in 1996. So he and Austin debuted in the same year. And The Rock was pushed as a third-generation wrestler because his dad and his maternal grandfather were both wrestlers as well. And McMahon's advice that he gave him was you can never smile too much. And so he plays this smiling, good-natured, shucks, great sportsmanship appreciator, Rocky Maivia. And the audience liked him for his first 1 or 2 matches, and after that they started chanting Rocky sucks and die Rocky die, because he was just such an old school and boring and bland character.
Right.
And so The Rock Dwayne Johnson says to McMahon, please let me turn heel. So he turns heel, he aligns himself with the Nation of Domination, who are a bunch of black militant angry protesters, and basically starts just making fun of everyone. And that's essentially The Rock's gimmick is that he's a jock who bullies people. And
his father was happy with the sudden shift in direction.
Oh, well, it completely elevated him because the boos that he was getting were now the good kind of boos because he was playing a bad guy. And eventually, because of his natural charisma, he ended up turning babyface later in 19. So he turns heel in sort of late 97. Late 97? Hold on a second. He turns heel around mid to late 97 after getting booed as a babyface. And then all throughout 1998, he ends up... They start cheering for him because he's so darn entertaining. And he actually organically turns babyface. But then there's a brilliant moment at Survivor Series 98 where it turns out Swerve Bro, he was a heel all along, and he starts working with McMahon and he turns heel again. And then he has to turn babyface the following year anyway because everyone loves him so much. The Rock's really good at switching between playing a heel and a babyface, but because the character is quite similar. But another example of McMahon trying to push a babyface no one wanted was The Rock's cousin, Roman Reigns. I don't know if they're actually cousins in real life, but they're very close. Anyway, who is at the moment one of the most beloved babyfaces in the company. But in the mid 2010s, when McMahon was pushing him, he was just super bland. He did not have a good moveset because he'd been rushed through it. He'd been part of a really popular trio, and he worked great as being the muscle of the trio who did a couple of really big moves, but didn't know enough in the ring to carry himself as a singles performer. And just he was doing the same generic Hulk Hogan promos that McMahon loved writing, and so people would just boo him out of the building. Because there's a moment where they literally he won the Royal Rumble in, I believe, 2015, and they bring in The Rock to like put him over and hold his hand up and announce him as the new #1 contender, and the audience is just booing him out of the building. They're like not even attempting to not even attempting to pay lip service to the story. And
again, what this is emphasizing is that idea that for one thing that makes wrestling remarkable is how cleverly and carefully it listens to the audience in cases like this, where you have dramatic shifts in character identity, and again being able to be an effective wrestler or ref in that space is about listening to that audience quickly enough that you don't lose them, I guess. Because the danger there is, I guess, if you lose the audience, they won't come back. They'll.
Well, this is a similarity that another similarity between McMahon and Trump is that they say a whole bunch of stuff and they cater to people and do what they say what people want them to say when they're on the bottom and when they're on the back foot and they're not the guys on top, and then the second they're in a position of power they just do whatever they want. And McMahon did not care that people didn't like Roman Reigns. He kept on pushing him as the top babyface. Had him retire The Undertaker, who was one of the most popular and beloved wrestlers ever. Well, retired him for all of a year because wrestlers don't retire. And basically had him demolish dudes who people would want to see rise up. They'd get pushed down the card. Roman Reigns would squash them. McMahon was like, I don't care. No, I've got no challenges. I've got no competition. I'm on top of this monopoly. Roman Reigns is the guy that I want you guys to cheer for. Even if you boo him out of the building, I don't care. I'm still going to push him.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because one of the stories which could unfold there is a classic tale of one's hubris leading to their downfall. And while I guess one argument from what I know would be that's what McMahon has got, nevertheless, WWE is it's a monopoly. It's like the only wrestling game at the moment in the States. It is a success.
I mean, there's the two challenges that it has, TNA and AEW, are on much smaller scales. And TNA, in fact, actually has a cooperation going on with WWE's developmental brand.
Right, so
it's basically they're saying you are that far below us that you work with our rookies.
So to bring it back now to where we'll discuss the Royal Rumble, as we're talking about listening to the audience is really important.
Yes.
Part of it is moments in wrestling that happen during a year where significant things occur that set the tone for what's about to happen. So, people would know WrestleMania, people would know other examples where, there's title matches. So what's Royal Rumble? Why is Royal Rumble so important?
So the Royal Rumble's been running since, I believe, 1988, possibly 87. No, wait, hold on a second. 88. And WrestleMania has been running since 1985. So WrestleMania is the biggest show of the year. It happens around late March, early April. And it's because wrestling is all about ongoing storylines, the big storylines will climax at WrestleMania. The Royal Rumble, it happens in late January, early February, and what it is a 30-person battle royale where it starts out with two people in the ring, And every minute and a half, someone new comes in the ring, and the only way to be eliminated is to be thrown over the top rope. So you can go under the top rope and still be part of it and leave the ring and come back later on. But the reward for winning the Royal Rumble is that you get to choose to challenge for either the Undisputed belt or the World Heavyweight Championship belt at WrestleMania.
So the Royal Rumble that happened this year, which was last weekend.
Sunday just gone, yeah.
Sunday just gone. As you were saying, involves 30 people coming out. Like once every 2 minutes, you'll have a new wrestler come into the ring. So you can end up with a really crowded ring of a lot of people, or suddenly you'll have a whole group of people thrown out. So it is a very dynamic, crazy space. And I know you were saying one of the things that can be remarkable about it is seeing people that normally aren't fighting together suddenly dueling it out. There's male and female Royal Rumble events. So the first was the female wrestlers, and then the male wrestlers, and then there was a ladder match between those. Is that always the case in Royal Rumble, or was that a kind of
So the Royal Rumble match generally lasts about an hour. And you can't have a card that only lasts for an hour when you've got, because it was I think it was something like a 70,000 person stadium. People will say it's the second biggest show of the year after WrestleMania.
70,000.
Yeah, it was between 65 and 73. It's not really clear, but so they have to have other matches on there as well, and they always have a title match. And the title match that they had for the Undisputed Championship this year at the Royal Rumble, because it's the sort of the third meeting of two wrestlers who've had an ongoing rivalry, it was made a ladder match, which is no disqualification, so that there's got to be a decisive victor.
So there were a couple of events going on, and what we'll do is we'll listen to. I'm just trying to find some audio that we could assess and analyze.
And in terms of listening to the audience, and that was one of the reasons why this Royal Rumble was quite significant, because there were a lot of favorites to win, guys who've been sort of top guys for a very long time. Like John Cena was one of the favorites to win because he's currently on his retirement tour, and he's been with WWE since 2002. He's become a Hollywood actor. He's a huge meme online because everyone thinks he's invisible. He was a huge favorite. Other contenders like CM Punk was a huge favorite because he's never had a main event at WrestleMania, even though he's one of the most popular wrestlers around. Other big names like Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. We talked about Roman Reigns being hated before. These days, he is one of the biggest names because he improved. He did turn heel. He had a lengthy run as a main villain. People started liking him because he's just so darn charismatic. But the person who won it was someone no one picked, who was Jey Uso, who basically the audience chants and dances. Like, he has this dance he has where he laps his hands over one another and he bounces them up and down, and he can have entire stadiums doing that and chanting yeet at him because his catchphrase is yeet. And big people have been enjoying him so much, they were like, this guy's got to win the Royal Rumble because he's such a fan favorite right now. And
again, I guess you're looking to try and bounce, because you had that final three was an interesting spectrum of identities. You had John Cena, and then Logan Paul,
yes.
Right.
The influencer who is one of the absolute greatest heels ever in WWE.
Yeah.
Because everyone despises him, and he's also a really terrific athlete, and he's got no problem making people hate him.
Well, let's listen to, so this will be watchmojo.com. We'll give some react to. This is their top 10 WWE Royal Rumble 2025 moments, and we'll see how close they stick to what we felt were the best moments, as well as whether or not their analysis of why these moments mattered speaks to us.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the most standout spots and memorable moments from this year's Royal Rumble.
And now look at a KO now. Oh, and he slams Cody right off the camera.
Number 10, I Show Speed shows up. The WWE loves a good celebrity / social media collab. IShowSpeed had the chance to live out a lot of fans' dreams when Triple H called an audible and included this famous streamer and rapper into the men's Royal Rumble match.
So, wait a minute. IShowSpeed actually has an elimination in the Rumble. The dog's barking in the ring.
This wasn't the first time Speed appeared at a WWE Premium Live event, since he'd previously assisted Logan Paul while dressed as a bottle of Prime Energy drink. This time was a bit different, however, since Speed actually eliminated Otis from the Rumble before being speared out of his boots by Braun Breaker.
Speed's still in the match. He hasn't been. Well, now he's eliminated now. Sir, are you okay? No, he's not okay. Are you okay, sir?
Number 9.
All right.
We need to unpack one of those phrases that they used.
Yes.
Because he said Triple H called an audible.
What does that mean?
So Triple H right now is head of creative. He was a wrestler for about 25 odd years with WWE, but he's had a pacemaker. But he's, essentially a really good booker, so he's good at doing the creative side. But calling an audible is what happens when something happens within a match that wasn't planned, and the wrestlers have to figure out a solution. One of the most famous examples is Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle for the championship in 2003. Brock Lesnar does a shooting star press. He's a big dude. He's basically got a bodybuilder's physique. He jumps off the top rope, does a spin, and then lands on his head. So horribly concusses himself. And
and that's not on the script.
No,
right?
You can't. You wouldn't plan to get concussed. And the match was supposed to keep on going. So Kurt Angle, his opponent, calls an audible. He says to him, "Hit me with your finishing move and pin me right now." So that we can wrap the match up. Another one is
so this is moments where you still feel you can get to the end of how the match is meant to happen, but you're going to have to improvise and try to make it as best as you can to pull something off that's going to entertain to the end.
Yeah, and another example of an audible actually affecting a match outcome, because Lesnar was like always supposed to win that match, but one that was affected the outcome of an episode of I think it was an episode of Raw. This team had joined the WWF from the WCW back in 2000, and the idea was that they had to win 2 matches, 2 out of 3 matches, to get permanent contracts. And obviously they lost the first match because that builds dramatic tension. But during the second match, Eddie Guerrero, one of the wrestlers, the Radicals, he was working with an injured arm, but he hadn't told anyone because he didn't want to jeopardize his chance of staying. And so he's having a match with a member of D-Generation X, who are the heel wrestlers, the heel stable, and he says, "I've hurt my arm. I can't keep performing. I need you to pin me." So
pin him to finish the match with him losing.
Yes, he was supposed to win, but he ends up losing. And so because they've now lost 2 out of 3 matches, there's no reason to have the third one. And there are stories about how the audience basically just had to watch an empty ring because it completely threw out their plans for the episode, and they had to race backstage and script something really hastily to figure out what they were going to do for the rest of the episode.
Now, the audible that is claimed to have occurred here.
Yes,
though,
sorry,
right?
I dig off.
So,
where because
those ones seem to be, injuries that are genuine. Now, in this case, in Royal Rumble, and again, it was a pleasure to be around your place watching it with you. This was hilarious. Talk through what the audible was in response to.
So there's a stable called Alpha Academy, who are a bunch of fitness people who are all basically ditzers. Lovable ditzers, though. And one of the members, Akira Tozawa, he runs out to do his first ever Royal Rumble, and then he gets jumped by a heel who's leaving and knocked unconscious before he even makes it to the ring. So part of the story, obviously.
And it's fun. I mean, it is done just so out of the blue. Has that ever happened before? Someone like just as their music hasn't even finished playing and they're knocked out.
There have been times where people have been attacked and knocked out on the ramp. There's actually one time where someone
by fans or?
No. Well, as part of the story,
right?
And there was actually a time where one of the wrestlers got knocked out on the ramp, but then woke up, came back, and won the Rumble. So that trope's been done before.
Oh, really?
But the idea of them having to send out an influencer instead of the actual wrestler, that's quite unique. Yeah.
So what happened? Like suddenly the camera cuts to the backstage.
Yeah.
and we've got Triple H, who's just in that backstage area, and we've got this influencer, Speed.
I Show Speed,
who suddenly says, "We need someone out there. Who can we get to go out there now?" And I Show Speed is just the closest. Is that his name? I Show Speed?
Yeah, I Show Speed. That's his streamer name, yeah.
Because he's a streamer, immensely successful. I mean, what's in it for WWE doing that? I mean, it seems weird to get a streamer out there against professional wrestlers. He's I mean, I guess he's a fit guy. He does a little backflip when he's there. He throws out one of the other big wrestlers.
It's basically so kids can be like, "Whoa, I Show Speed is here," and that will get the younger generation who watches this dude involved. And also, he's good mates with Logan Paul as well. But it also brings them attention because he was actually on stream when he got called up to.
Oh, really?
He was streaming on his phone and everything.
Right? Yeah. So if you were one of his fans watching his stream, and then suddenly your idol is then called into the wrestling, you'd feel so much part of that. Wow, I was on the stream watching it when that live happened. Yeah, and giving it number 10, do you reckon number 10 makes sense as a Watch Mojo? Was that on? Would that be in the top 10?
I mean, it's very subjective. It's
an unusual one,
and because like Akira Tozawa gets knocked out, and then Otis, the other member of Alpha Academy in the men's rumble, gets thrown out by I Show Speed. I thought, wasn't a huge fan. Good for the heel heat, but I quite like Alpha Academy. So it didn't please me as a fan, but I can understand why people would appreciate it.
All right, let's listen to the number 9.
C represents
The following is the Women's Royal Rumble match!
The Women's Royal Rumble match was a great way to kick off this year's show, and it also featured a number of quality appearances from NXT talents. This premium live event can usually be relied upon to deliver some high-level NXT representation.
And now Valkyria into the ring, and once takes out Liv Morgan. And now with a big kick as well to Roxanne Perez. Lyra Valkyria, a joy to watch.
But seeing Roxanne Perez make it to the final 3 competitors was seriously impressive. Elsewhere, Lash Legend felt like a future superstar in there, while Jordynne Grace's feats of strength made us super stoked to follow her WWE journey as she continues down in the world of NXT.
Jordynne Grace just does everything with him. Dana Parker eliminated by Jordynne Grace.
Nope.
All right, so number 9, speaking there to the Women's Royal Rumble events, and particularly calling out a number of female wrestlers there that did well. It was remarkable to see the attention and prominence given to women's wrestling within Royal Rumble. Would you say that's one of the finer female wrestling moments recently?
Look, I'm a sucker for a Royal Rumble, so I'd say any Rumble's one of the finer moments in women's wrestling recently. But what they're actually saying was that number 9 slot was because there were so many women coming in from NXT, from the developmental brand.
And what is NXT?
So basically it's all under the umbrella of WWE. WWE has 2 flagship shows, Monday Night Raw, which airs on Mondays, and Friday Night SmackDown. I don't know what day Friday Night SmackDown airs on. But essentially the roster is so big that they segregate wrestlers to different rosters. So and at the start of each year they might get shuffled around, but generally if a wrestler's on Raw, they're going to be on Raw for the rest of the year. And NXT is on Wednesday nights, and so usually if you're getting called up to WWE, because that's the big leagues, generally you have to already be an established wrestler on the indie circuit, and you going around and doing a whole bunch of shows so that they'll catch hold of you. But NXT is the developmental brand,
right?
So the idea is that
they're recruiting from this space,
and they're training people up. Right. So because they've got a really big performance center, I believe it's in Connecticut. I don't know where it is, or it could be in Georgia. It's somewhere. No, wait, no. I think the development center is in Atlanta, and it's run by Shawn Michaels, who's Triple H's best friend in real life, and was that guy who McMahon was babying back in the 90s. He's become a born again Christian. He's a trainer, and he trains people up. And you really see that because a lot of the modern superstars, after they have their time on NXT and then graduate to Raw or SmackDown, they use very similar movesets to Shawn Michaels. So it's essentially like an old master teaching his new disciples his fighting style. But so yeah, basically we're saying that it's great that like there are so many talented women on the NXT roster who will move up to Raw and SmackDown at some point very soon.
So it's very much setting up the new blood that might be coming in. And did you feel that as well? Did you feel like, there's a lot of new blood coming through the female competition? That's wonderful to see in the Rumble.
Yeah, I thought the NXT team wrestlers were treated extremely well. Though, we do have to mention the winner of the Women's Royal Rumble. If we're talking about the new blood,
I wonder if this is going to be on their list. But yeah, let's.
So basically, the woman who won the Women's Royal Rumble, Charlotte Flair, hasn't been on TV since 2023. She's done 2 video packages announcing that she's coming back, and she's already back onto the title scene. And the reason why, she's obviously a talented wrestler, but she gets given a lot of opportunities because she is the daughter of Ric Flair, who is one of Triple H's best mates and considered by many to be the greatest wrestler of all time. And wrestling is an extremely nepotistic business. So Triple H himself, because he married McMahon's daughter, so he married the McMahon family, essentially hogged a bunch of belts and took up way too much screen time in the early to mid 2000s, and that was called the Reign of Terror, and people actually stopped watching in droves because he spent so long playing second fiddle to Austin and The Rock and The Undertaker. He was like, I'm the main character now, and people just didn't like it. So the nepotism angle and the same old people getting the same opportunities is looked down upon.
And it's risky. I mean, some fans would share your point of view as well and feel like they're being treated as, it's kind of silly, not knowing. Well, let's see if that comes up as one of their
lists. The Street Profits effect.
It is a long-time personal rivalry here. Gargano and Shelley go a long way back, over 20 years.
The 2 out of 3 falls match between DIY and the Motor City Machine Guns was a fluid and beautifully worked contest. There was a lot of thought and ring psychology on display, such as the fake-out tag that resulted in a fall for Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano.
Whoever gets that fall. Wait a minute, Gargano didn't make a tag. And, wait a minute, Shelley thinks Gargano's legal, but Ciampa's still legal, I think. Oh, big knee.
Both teams honestly put on a clinic celebrating tag team wrestling for the art form it truly is. That said, we're not even upset at how the Street Profits interfered in the match and influenced the ending.
And now, that's Angelo Dawkins to the Profits with his crutch.
What the hell? That means, they were taken out in a mystery attack.
Well, and DIY took him out.
Their storyline motivations felt realistic as they prevented the Motor City Machine Guns from pulling the trigger. Yet they also battered DIY, determined to regain their tag team titles from the team that put the Profits on the shelf.
What the hell was the... Wait a second, and now...
Well, now Montez...
The Profits help DIY...
Wait a minute!
Oh, my God!
Dawkins!
Number 7.
It's interesting because we skipped that.
We did. it was something like a 4-hour show. And like, well, we got 2 1-hour rumbles to watch and a 30-minute match between Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes. So let's just skip the tag match.
Yeah. And that's what I was thinking. I mean, it was a busy, packed event. And if you're seeing it live, as you're saying, entertaining, and you're committing to a whole day, or at least half day. But yeah, what do you think? Had you seen anything of that or heard anything about that?
I'll be honest, I'm not super invested in the tag team scene in WWE at the moment. There's so much to keep track of with the singles performers. I mean, there's 4 major belts per division. So the women have 4 belts and the men have 4 belts. So that's 8 championship scenes that you've got to keep an eye on. So I struggle to also care about the tag team divisions. Although there's a really good ongoing story with the women's tag team division, but I don't care what's happening in the men's right now.
Because it's a bit like tennis, and you can watch doubles or just skip it. And
it's like there's 6 hours of WWE content to get through each week. There's only so much that we can care about.
What's interesting, so they put that one at number 8. Let's see where number 7 is then.
Say his name and he appears. The career of Joe Hendry has not been an overnight success, but rather one of measured consistency. Yet, there's no denying the man's viral success over the internet, as his theme song just seems to follow us wherever we go. That's why we were so glad to see the TNA World Champion appear in the Men's Royal Rumble match.
I believe in Joe Hendry too.
Joe Hendry now with a fall-away slam. He beat Nick Nemeth for the championship back in January. And listen to this place.
Granted, his showing wasn't quite big or bad enough to warrant it a higher spot on this list. Still, we hope that this is just the beginning when it comes to Hendry's working relationship with the WWE.
Parading around the ring with Miz and a slam.
And hey, if it exposes the work of Joe Hendry to a wider audience, all the better.
In front of over 70,000.
Number 6.
All right, so number 7, Joe Hendry. How does he fit in terms of the night for you? Did you feel that, I'm waiting to see more and so forth?
I thought the best part of it was honestly Sheamus's reaction to it, because Sheamus is this 6.5 foot like Celtic warrior who's built like an ox, and Joe Hendry is essentially if Freddie Mercury entered into Eurovision. He's very small. He's very well. He's not small. He's also built like a Mack truck, but he's like smaller than Sheamus. And he's essentially doing all these like dancey moves and getting everyone to stomp, stomp, clap along with "We Will Rock You." But I mean, the best part is that Sheamus is in the corner just watching him, and he with this sort of like bemused smile on his face. And at the end of the sequence, Jacob Partu, the Samoan werewolf, spears Joe Hendry, and then Sheamus goes, "I was enjoying that. I was enjoying that. Why are you so bleeding angry?"
It's a shame they didn't mention that in the Watch
That was the best. I howled with laughter. But I mean, it's good because Joe Hendry is he's the current champion of TNA, which is a different wrestling promotion, completely separate to WWE. But they now have a working relationship between TNA and NXT. So there's a little bit of talent transfer that goes on. And yeah, Joe Hendry went hugely viral with a bunch of his music videos last year.
So these music videos are ones which, like, obviously there's music that plays when he comes into the stadium.
Yeah, he wrote that. He was a professional musician before he became a wrestler. So he actually writes and sings and plays the songs to the music
and those
video.
have gone viral.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So, because of course, you know what, it was amusing to hear that John Cena's career was on the ropes, as it were, but he picked up once it was discovered he could rap.
Yeah, because there was nothing unique about him. He was just a generic bodybuilder. But then Stephanie McMahon heard him rapping on a bus, and they basically
Did he release music?
he's released an album.
God.
They literally just turned him into Marky Mark. So they're both from New England.
All right, let's do. I think we're up to number 6 now.
Number 6. Let's see what it is.
All right.
Charlotte wins.
Yay.
She now gets to pick the champion of her choosing to face at the Granddaddy, the spectacle in Las Vegas.
Major WWE returns during a Royal Rumble match usually mean one of two things. That wrestler is about to embark upon a new creative run, or they're just gonna win the whole damn thing. Charlotte Flair had nothing to prove to anyone prior to returning for the Royal Rumble 2025, and she certainly didn't show up to lose.
What is absolutely true.
Meanwhile, Charlotte Flair now. Charlotte Flair dumps Nia out. It's down to Charlotte and Roxanne. It's down to Charlotte and Roxanne.
Still, the final three of Flair, Nia Jax, and Roxanne Perez did make us question which superstar bullet WWE had in the proverbial chamber. Yet, once the Queen eliminated Nia Jax, we could read the relative writing on the wall, and we were ready to bow down.
What a win. What a return. What another massive moment.
Number 5.
All right, so this, as Watch Mojo is suggesting, that when a big name comes in like this, it can go two ways, I think they said. One was, you know, it's going to be then a creative direction. They'll take some of their storyline in, or they'll just win it all. So you think they're setting her up just to win it all again?
Well, she got booed out of the building on Raw 2 nights later.
Really?
She comes in to cut her first promo on Raw in years, and they're like, nah, go away.
Really? So your kind of lukewarm reaction to it was very much...
Well, the thing is that there are a bunch of women on the roster right now who are stellar performers. And the 2 champions they have right now are two of the best women who've ever been part of WWE. I'm just thinking it would just be a shame if apparently Tiffany Stratton, who is the current SmackDown Women's Champion, apparently the plan is for her to have a match with Charlotte. But there's only so many times you can recycle the same thing. It's like the same reason why essentially after a wrestler's had like their shelf life is over, they should spend the rest of their career sort of putting over and making the new talent look. And that's the reason why Hulk Hogan is so controversial as a wrestler, is because he's just always, when he was in the ring, he was always trying to keep the belts on himself. And he just did not want to elevate the younger talent. He was just like, nah, it's me and my mates, and you guys can just go away.
Which is, again, bringing it back to the end of the Royal Rumble, where people saw, even though John Cena lost,
yeah,
that kind of passing of the baton, the kind of, the sense of sportsmanship, respect to the winner, to elevate them up, it would unlikely to have been done by Hulk Hogan or...
No, some of his moments of poor sportsmanship are legendary.
All right, well, hold on. Let's go to number 5.
Let's do number 5.
We've only got a few minutes left.
Spots.
Cody Rhodes is now the hunted. He is no longer the hunter. And Wade, you've known Cody for so long. This is a much different American Nightmare.
Ladder matches are almost always a deadly proposition. These contests aren't for the squeamish and usually boast tons of spots that put the D in dangerous. This one from the Royal Rumble 2025 featured some truly wince-inducing moments for both Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens.
Oh God, look what's coming.
Oh my God, not this. Not, oh my goodness!
Both competitors seem to be trying to one-up each other when it came to ladder bumps, from Rhodes' back body drop to Owens to the latter's epic Fisherman Buster.
Yeah, oh my God, Owens is hooking the leg! Fisherman Buster! Fisherman Buster! To the ladder!
However, the champ definitely took the cake when he effectively put the coup de grace on KO. That Alabama slam from the announce desk took our collective breath away. It was a grisly sight.
Alabama slam through the ladder! Kevin Owens turned inside out!
Number 4, Howl.
All right. What did you think of the ladder match?
I thought it was incredible. It was great. So for anyone who doesn't know, a ladder match is basically something suspended above the ring. You need to climb a ladder and get it. There's no disqualification. And it was just the payoff to a story that those two and Triple H have been building over the last 7 or 8 months, where Cody and Kevin Owens were friends and teammates, and then Kevin turned heel. They had a match at Saturday Night's Main Event. Kevin badly injured Cody, and then they've just been arguing over who's the true champion. It was a great match. Although it's interesting, the 2 nights later on Raw, Kevin Owens was back like nothing had happened.
Oh, really? Because that great scene of him being, what was it, the Alabama
slam through the table, yeah, which ends with like Kevin Owens looks like he's had his neck broken.
Yeah, because his head goes through the gap in the ladder.
Yeah,
and he's left. Like all you see is the top of his body slumped over itself.
Yeah, I just feel like they should have kept him off TV for a couple of weeks just to sell the injuries.
You had that other wrestler come in who was a friend of both.
Yeah, Sami Zayn.
Genuinely, hamming up the kind of distress of oh no. So it was a big production made of something. Yeah, it was surprising to hear he's back as if nothing had happened. Really.
Yeah.
So they'll milk that out in highlight reels, but...
Oh, absolutely. We're going to be seeing that on TV for years to come.
It was interesting. I can't recall if I've seen any other ladder matches, but it was certainly a fantastic one to watch because of the number of ladders that were being brought into the ring. There was a step ladder at one point. There were full ladders. And it was interesting. There were moments because they're all weaponized. But watching it again, you can see there are moments where, there will be care taken to make sure the letter is somewhat open so that the following move can throw them between it and still bounce off. It's, the choreography of the letter damage is quite remarkable. And there was a bit of blading.
Yeah, Kevin Owens blades when he gets put through the ladder at the end, and he's a bloody mess by the end of it.
And that, obviously there would have been some real cuts and bruises, but also to ensure that there's some dramatic visual imagery, having blood coming from the head is expected, or is this something that elevates it to the next level of distress?
It would have been expected in the 1980s or like the late 90s, early 2000s. It's not super expected these days because blading was banned for so many years because of the risk of, transmitting disease through blood. But
at the height of the AIDS crisis.
Yeah. But Triple H has said you can blade on special occasions, and this was a special occasion.
And bleeding, would you say, would that have been a clear-cut bleeding case? Because talk me through what bleeding is. It's where there's an actual small blade held in a...
So what they'll do is they'll take a small razor blade, which is meant to go on a double-edged shaving razor. They'll cut a small bit of it off, and they'll wrap it in tape, and they'll hide it either on their wrist tape, or some of the guys actually hide it in their mouths, which is terrifying to me. And at a moment in the match, they'll take it out when the cameras are not on them or when they're down, and they'll cut a bit of their forehead open.
And this is the injured athlete themselves doing it?
Yes.
Or the athlete that wants to appear even more injured now?
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily the guy attacking them that has a blade that then is starting to scar up that character or their opponent. It's actually the wounded guy who wants to appear even more wounded.
Yes.
Right.
There have been stories about guys who wanted to blade but didn't feel comfortable doing it, so they got their opponent to blade them instead. That's what happened in the Hart versus Austin match because Austin didn't want to get fined for blading. And also Abdullah the Butcher, who was an independent wrestler for many, many decades, was notorious for blading people without their consent.
What?
He gave a lot of people hepatitis C.
Holy cow, that's criminal.
Yeah.
That's criminal.
Yeah.
I wonder what court cases occurred there.
A lot.
I'd hope so.
He got sued to within an inch of his life.
Gee whiz. Wow. Media Mothership, all the drama, historical, but fascinating. So, like always, when we have you in to talk about wrestling, we get halfway through what I've planned. So we're at number 5. We'll leave it there. We've got a little overtime. But I think it's certainly ramping up. I do like where the Mojo list has started warming up. Now that we're in the top 5, certainly that ladder match, as you're saying as well, a really, really solid piece of. Would you say it's one of the better ladder matches you've seen?
Oh yeah, like that I've personally seen. It is definitely one of the better ones.
Of those 10 to 5 rankings, any surprises there? Anything that you're thinking is a little, a kind of surprising or?
No, I think they were all good picks.
Well, we'll see where the top 5 goes. We'll get you back sometime in the future when you have time permitting. But thanks for listening. This has been Media Mothership for another week. Thank you so much, Dent.
Thanks for having me.
And keep listening to Edge Radio, more exciting music and stuff around the corner. If you are interested in previous episodes of Media Mothership, as well as the previous wrestling discussions we've had Dant in on, because we've done a whole WrestleMania. I think it was Den of Geeks top 10 WrestleManias of all time. We went through and unpacked.
Oh yeah, top 15 WrestleMania matches.
Yeah. So that's out there. I'll post a link to that in the show notes, and you can listen to other stuff as well on YouTube or Twitch channel. So keep listening. Now we'll cue up some really cool music. And if you are interested in Wrestling Force, it's all on Netflix now, isn't it?
Oh, that's a controversy. So WWE is all on Netflix, but they also own the tape libraries to WCW and ECW, and they are not on Netflix. And in fact, there are a few episodes of a few pay-per-views that are not on Netflix. They were all on binge, and now there's a lot of stuff that's no longer.
Really? So they've Oh, well, I feel like we need another half hour. So they've migrated the catalog from binge, so it's no longer on binge.
No,
there's no wrestling anymore on binge. It's now not all of it though.
Yeah.
But the big WWE stuff's on Netflix, as well as some historical, You know, the hair match is there if you want to watch the Trump versus McMahon hair
WrestleMania
match.
23.
Go check out WrestleMania 23, and you can now understand further about his policy towards Gaza. Probably, if you watch that, you can see the showmanship on display with that decision. Wow, right. So where can you go for YouTube? Any other sources?
Probably Dailymotion or buy the DVDs and the VHSs.
The grim old days of physical media still. All right. Well, thank you, Dent. What we'll listen to now is... eventually there'll be some music.